The champagne glass slipped from Zara Bennett's fingers, and she watched in horror as it tumbled toward the marble floor of the gallery, only to be caught mid-air by a hand that moved faster than she thought possible. "Careful there," the man said, his voice warm and teasing as he handed the glass back to her. "These things cost more than my first car." Zara felt heat rush to her cheeks as she took the glass from him, meeting eyes that were such a striking shade of green. They reminded her of summer leaves after rain. He was tall, probably 6'2" or 6'3", with dark hair that looked like he had run his fingers through it more than once tonight, and a smile that made something flutter in her chest. "Thank you," she managed, trying to gather her composure. "I was just startled by that sculpture. It looks like it's about to attack someone." The man laughed, a genuine sound that made several people turn their heads. "You're not wrong. Contemporary art isn't exactly my thing either, but my best friend dragged me here. Something about supporting local artists and networking." He made a face that suggested he would rather be anywhere else. "Your best friend has good taste in causes, at least," Zara said, relaxing slightly. "I'm here because I did the floral arrangements. The gallery owner is a client of mine." "You're a florist." He seemed genuinely interested, which was refreshing. Most people at these events only wanted to talk about themselves. "I own a flower shop in the Arts District, Bennett Blooms. We do events, weddings, that sort of thing." She gestured around the gallery, where her arrangements of white orchids and deep purple calla lilies adorned pedestals and corners. "I usually just drop off the flowers and leave, but the owner insisted I stay for the opening." "I'm glad she did," he said, and the sincerity in his voice made her heart skip. "I'm Xavier, by the way, Xavier Hayes. Zara Bennett." They shook hands, and Zara noticed his grip was firm but not crushing, his palm calloused in a way that suggested he worked with his hands despite his expensive-looking suit. "So Xavier, what do you do when you're not being dragged to art galleries?" she asked. Before he could answer, a voice called out across the gallery. "Xavier, there you are. I need you to meet someone." A man approached them, and Zara felt her breath catch. He was shorter than Xavier by an inch or two, with perfectly styled blonde hair and a suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. He had the kind of polished appearance that screamed money and power, and he moved through the crowd like he owned the place. "Zara, this is Xander Hamilton," Xavier said, and something in his tone shifted, became more formal. "My best friend and the reason I'm wearing a tie on a Friday night." Xander's blue eyes swept over Zara with an assessing look that made her feel like a butterfly pinned to a board. "Charmed," he said smoothly, taking her hand and bringing it to his lips in a gesture that seemed both old-fashioned and calculated. "Any friend of Xavier's is someone I should know." "We just met, actually," Zara said, pulling her hand back gently. "I did the flowers." "They're beautiful," Xander said, though he barely glanced at the nearest arrangement. "You have excellent taste. Xavier, I need to borrow you for just a moment. There's someone from the Hamilton Industries Board here, and it would be good for you to meet him." Xavier shot Zara an apologetic look. "Save me a dance later?" he asked. "There's dancing." Zara looked around the gallery with surprise. "There will be," Xander said with a confident smile. "I made sure of it." As the two men walked away, Zara found herself watching Xavier's retreating back. There was something about him that felt different from the usual crowd at these events. He seemed genuine, like he actually cared about what she had to say rather than just waiting for his turn to talk. The evening progressed, and Zara found herself in conversation with the gallery owner, discussing future projects and exchanging business cards with potential clients. It was good for business, but she kept finding her gaze drawn across the room to where Xavier stood, clearly uncomfortable as Xander introduced him to various important-looking people. When the music started and the gallery's open space transformed into an impromptu dance floor, Zara decided it was time to make her exit. She had an early delivery tomorrow morning and these heels were starting to hurt, leaving so soon. Xavier appeared beside her just as she retrieved her coat from the check. "Early morning tomorrow," she said with a rueful smile. "The flowers don't arrange themselves." "Let me walk you out," he offered, and before she could protest, he was guiding her toward the door with a gentle hand on her lower back. The night air was cool and welcome after the stuffy warmth of the gallery. The street was quiet, lit by old-fashioned street lamps that cast pools of golden light on the sidewalk. "I never got to answer your question," Xavier said as they walked toward where Zara had parked her van. "About what I do." "Let me guess," Zara said, studying him. "Something outdoors." "You have working hands, not desk hands." Xavier looked surprised, then pleased. "Construction. I'm a project manager for a development company. We build commercial properties, some residential, nothing glamorous." "I think building things is plenty glamorous," Zara said. "You create spaces where people will live and work and make memories. That's important." They reached her van, which looked decidedly worse for wear with its faded paint and the Bennett Bloom's logo that she had applied herself with questionable skill. "This is me," she said, fishing for her keys. "Can I see you again?" Xavier asked, and there was a vulnerability in his voice that made her look up sharply. "Maybe somewhere without pretentious art and overpriced champagne." Zara felt herself smile. "I'd like that." They exchanged numbers, and as Zara drove home through the quiet streets, she found herself replaying their conversation, the way he had caught her glass, the warmth of his laugh. She had dated, of course, but nothing serious in the past few years. Building her business had consumed most of her time and energy. But there was something about Xavier Hayes that made her think maybe it was time to make room for something else in her life. The next few weeks unfolded like a dream. Xavier called her the day after the gallery opening, and they met for coffee at a small cafe near her shop. Then dinner at a family-owned Italian restaurant where they talked for hours about everything and nothing. He told her about growing up in a working-class neighborhood, how he had put himself through college working construction jobs, how he had met Xander Hamilton in their sophomore year when they had been randomly assigned as roommates. "He's from a completely different world," Xavier said, twirling pasta on his fork. "His family owns Hamilton Industries. They do real estate development, investment, some manufacturing. Xander's being groomed to take over the whole empire, but somehow we clicked. He's not what you'd expect from someone born with a silver spoon." Zara had nodded, though privately she thought Xander was exactly what she would expect from someone born wealthy. Polished, confident to the point of arrogance, someone who expected the world to arrange itself around his convenience. But Xavier clearly valued the friendship, so she kept her reservations to herself. Besides, she was far more interested in learning about Xavier himself. He talked about his work with genuine passion, describing the satisfaction of seeing a building go from blueprint to reality. He asked about her business with real curiosity, wanting to know how she had started, what her favorite flowers were, what her dreams looked like. "I want to expand eventually," Zara admitted over dessert. "Not just doing arrangements for events. I'd love to have a garden center, maybe offer classes in floral design and gardening. Create a community space." "That sounds amazing," Xavier said, and the way he looked at her made her believe he really thought so. They fell into a rhythm. Xavier would stop by her shop after work, still in his construction boots and high-visibility vest, and help her close up. Then they would grab dinner or just walk through the neighborhood, talking about their days. He made her laugh with stories about difficult clients and construction mishaps. She taught him the names of different flowers and their meanings. It was easy and natural, and Zara found herself falling for him with a speed that would have terrified her if it hadn't felt so right. The complication came in the form of Xander Hamilton, who seemed to appear whenever Zara and Xavier were together. At first, it was subtle, running into them at restaurants, showing up at the construction sites where Xavier worked with some excuse about Hamilton Industries business. Then it became more overt. "I'm having a dinner party next Saturday," Xander announced one evening when he found them having drinks at a rooftop bar. He pulled up a chair without invitation, signaling the waiter with the casual authority of someone who had never been told no. "You both should come. Xavier, you know most of the people already, and Zara, it would be good for you to network. I know several people who are planning weddings and events." Xavier glanced at Zara, and she could see he wanted to refuse but didn't want to seem rude. "What do you think?" he asked her. "Sure," Zara said, because what else could she say? "Sounds nice." Xander's dinner party was held at his penthouse apartment, which occupied the entire top floor of one of the city's most exclusive buildings. The view was spectacular, the food was catered by a Michelin-starred chef, and every guest seemed to be someone important. Zara felt out of place in her nicest dress, which suddenly seemed shabby compared to the designer gowns around her. Xavier stayed close to her side, introducing her to people and making sure she always had a drink in hand. But Xander was ever present, smoothly inserting himself into their conversations, touching Zara's arm to emphasize a point, complimenting her in ways that felt just a shade too intimate. "You look stunning tonight, Zara," he said during dinner, his voice carrying across the table. "That color brings out your eyes." Xavier's hand found hers under the table, squeezing gently. After dinner, as people mingled on the terrace, Xander caught Zara alone for a moment while Xavier was inside getting them fresh drinks. "He's lucky, you know," Xander said, leaning against the railing beside her. "Xavier, to have found someone like you." "I'm the lucky one," Zara said, keeping her tone light but firm. "Xavier's a good man," Xander continued, seemingly oblivious to her discomfort. "But he thinks small. He's content with his project manager job, his modest apartment. He doesn't have ambition beyond the next construction site." "There's nothing wrong with being content," Zara said, her voice cooling. "Not everyone measures success the same way." Xander turned to look at her, his blue eyes intense. "You're ambitious, though, I can tell. You want more than a small flower shop in the arts district." "I want to build something meaningful," Zara corrected. "That's different from just wanting more." Before Xander could respond, Xavier returned with their drinks and the moment passed. But it left Zara unsettled and she was quiet on the drive home. "You okay?" Xavier asked, glancing over at her as he navigated the late-night traffic. "Just tired," Zara said, which wasn't entirely a lie. "Your friend Xander is very intense." Xavier sighed. "Yeah, he can be. He means well, though. He's always trying to help, to make connections for people. Sometimes he doesn't realize when he's being too much." Zara wanted to say more, to express her discomfort with the way Xander seemed to always be inserting himself into their relationship, but she could hear the affection in Xavier's voice when he talked about his friend. They had known each other for years. She had known Xavier for weeks. It didn't seem fair to make him choose or even to make him question the friendship, so she let it go and they continued dating. The feelings between them deepened. Xavier started keeping a toothbrush at her apartment above the flower shop. She learned that he took his coffee black and liked to wake up early to go running. He learned that she was not a morning person, but would wake up anyway to make him breakfast before he left for work. They were lying in bed one Sunday morning, sunlight streaming through the windows when Xavier rolled over to face her. "I'm falling in love with you," he said, his green eyes serious. "Actually, I think I'm already there. I love you, Zara." Her heart felt like it might burst from her chest. "I love you too," she whispered, and when he kissed her, everything else fell away. They were happy. Genuinely, wonderfully happy. And then Xavier got the opportunity of a lifetime. Hamilton Industries is developing this massive mixed-use property downtown, he told her over dinner at their favorite Italian place. Retail spaces, apartments, a hotel, the works. It's the biggest project the company has ever undertaken. And Xander convinced his father to make me the lead project manager. "Xavier, that's incredible." Zara reached across the table to grab his hands. "It means more money, better hours eventually, and it would establish me as a serious player in commercial development," Xavier said, his excitement palpable. "This could change everything for us." Us. The word sent warmth flooding through her. But as the weeks passed and Xavier started working on the Hamilton project, things began to shift. He was busier, which was understandable. He spent more time with Xander, going over plans and meeting with investors. Also understandable. What was less understandable was the way Xander seemed to use every opportunity to remind Xavier of how much he owed him. "If it wasn't for Xander, this never would have happened," Xavier said more than once, and each time, Zara bit her tongue. She tried to be supportive. She brought lunch to the construction site and listened to Xavier talk about soil tests and zoning regulations and architectural plans. She attended functions where Xander held court and Xavier stood slightly behind him, impressive in his own right, but somehow always in his friend's shadow. And through it all, Xander's attention toward her never wavered. He remembered details about her business, asked about her expansion plans, complimented her appearance in ways that walked the line between friendly and inappropriate. When she mentioned needing a loan to expand Bennett Blooms, he offered to connect her with his family's bank, promising to put in a good word. "You don't need to do that," Zara said firmly. "But I want to," Xander insisted. "You're important to Xavier, which makes you important to me." The worst part was that Xavier seemed genuinely grateful for Xander's interest in Zara, interpreting it as a sign that his best friend approved of their relationship. He couldn't see what Zara saw, the way Xander's eyes lingered too long, the way his casual touches seemed calculated to test boundaries. Things came to a head at the Hamilton Industries Charity Gala, a massive event held in a hotel ballroom with hundreds of guests. Zara wore a new dress, something she had splurged on because Xavier had mentioned this was an important night. He looked incredible in his tuxedo, and they had danced and laughed, and she had felt like maybe she was being paranoid about Xander. Until Xavier got pulled away to talk with some investors, and Xander materialized at her side. "Dance with me," he said, and it wasn't quite a question. "I should wait for Xavier," Zara started, but Xander was already guiding her onto the dance floor. He was a good dancer, smooth and confident, and held her just slightly closer than was appropriate. Other people were watching, Zara realized. Xander Hamilton didn't dance with just anyone at these events. People would talk. "You could have more, you know," Xander said softly, his breath warm against her ear. "With someone like me, you wouldn't have to worry about business loans or expansion plans. I could give you everything you've ever wanted." Zara stopped moving. "I need to go." "Zara, wait." His hand tightened on her waist. "Just listen for a moment." "No." She pulled away, not caring who was watching anymore. "I'm with Xavier. I love Xavier. Whatever you think this is, you're wrong." She pushed through the crowd, looking for Xavier, and found him near the bar deep in conversation with several suited men. When he saw her face, he he immediately excused himself. "What happened?" he asked, concern etching his features. Zara opened her mouth to tell him everything about Xander's behavior, his inappropriate comments, the dance just now. But before she could speak, Xander appeared beside them, his expression unreadable. "Is everything all right?" he asked smoothly. "Zara, did I say something to upset you?" "I apologize if I did." The way he said it, with concern and confusion, made her feel like she was the one being unreasonable. Xavier looked between them, clearly lost. "I just need some air," Zara said, hating how her voice shook. "I'll come with you," Xavier said immediately. Outside, the cool night air helped clear her head. Xavier wrapped his jacket around her shoulders and waited patiently for her to speak. "Xander makes me uncomfortable," she finally said. "The way he looks at me, the things he says. Tonight on the dance floor, he basically propositioned me." Xavier's expression went from concern to disbelief. "Xander, are you sure? I mean, he can be awkward sometimes, but he would never deliberately disrespect our relationship." "I know what I heard, Xavier." "But he's been so supportive of us," Xavier argued, clearly struggling to reconcile his loyalty to his friend with his trust in Zara. "He's the one who encouraged me to ask you out in the first place. He's always saying how great you are." That made Zara pause. "He encouraged you to ask me out?" "Yeah, after the gallery opening. I told him about you, how easy you were to talk to, and he said I'd be stupid not to pursue it." Xavier ran a hand through his hair. "Zara, I trust you, but I've known Xander for years. He's like a brother to me." "Are you absolutely certain he was hitting on you and not just being friendly?" The doubt in his voice cut deep. Zara wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the jacket. "Forget it," she said quietly. "You're right, I probably misunderstood." But she hadn't misunderstood, and they both knew it. The drive home was tense and quiet. That night, Xavier slept on the couch, and in the morning he left early without saying goodbye. 3 days passed without contact. 3 days of Zara throwing herself into work, arranging flowers with shaking hands, wondering if she had just destroyed the best thing in her life because she couldn't handle Xander's attention. Maybe Xavier was right. Maybe she had misread the situation. On the 4th day, someone knocked on the shop door just as she was closing. Her heart leaped, hoping it was Xavier, but instead a young man stood there holding an envelope. "Delivery for Zara Bennett," he said. Inside the envelope was an invitation on heavy cardstock. Xander Hamilton was hosting a celebration for the groundbreaking of the new Hamilton Industries Development Project. Xavier's name was listed as the lead project manager. And there was a handwritten note: "Please come. This is Xavier's night, and he wants you there. I promise to be on my best behavior. Xander." Zara crumpled the note in her fist. The event was that evening. She could skip it, but Xavier did deserve to be celebrated for his achievement, and maybe this was Xander's way of apologizing, of backing off. She went home and changed into a simple black dress. Nothing fancy. The event was being held at the construction site itself, which had been cleared and decorated with lights and a large white tent. When Zara arrived, she could hear music and conversation, see people milling around with drinks. She spotted Xavier immediately. He stood near a display of architectural renderings, talking with an older man who had to be Xander's father based on the resemblance. When Xavier saw her, his entire face transformed. He excused himself and crossed the space to her in long strides. "You came," he said, and there was so much relief and love in his voice that Zara felt tears prick her eyes. "Of course I came," she said. "This is your night." "I'm sorry," Xavier said quickly, "for doubting you, for making you feel like I didn't believe you. I've been thinking about it for days, and I realize I was being defensive because I didn't want to see what was right in front of me." What changed your mind? Zara asked. Xavier glanced over his shoulder, then guided her away from the crowd toward the shadows at the edge of the construction site. I talked to one of the secretaries at Hamilton Industries, someone who has been with the company for years. I asked her if she had ever noticed Xander being inappropriate with women. She didn't want to say anything at first, but eventually, she admitted that there have been complaints. Nothing that ever went anywhere because of who his family is, but a pattern of behavior. His jaw clenched. I should have believed you immediately. I'm so sorry, Zara. She reached up to cup his face. You're here now, that's what matters. I love you, Xavier said fiercely. More than any job or friendship, you come first always. They kissed, and for a moment everything else faded away. Then a familiar voice interrupted them. There you both are. Xander approached with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Xavier, your presence is requested for the official groundbreaking ceremony. And Zara, I'm glad you could make it. There was something in Xander's tone that set Zara on edge, but Xavier squeezed her hand and said, We'll talk after the ceremony. The groundbreaking ceremony was brief, but celebratory. Xander gave a speech about Hamilton Industries' commitment to the city's growth and development, then introduced Xavier as the visionary project manager who would bring their plans to reality. Xavier said a few words, humble and genuine as always, and then there were photos with champagne and silver shovels turning dirt while people applauded. Zara stood at the back of the crowd, watching Xavier smile for the cameras, and she felt proud of him but also uneasy. Something felt off about the whole evening, a tension in the air she couldn't quite identify. After the ceremony, people moved back to the tent for food and more drinks. Zara was making her way toward Xavier when a hand caught her elbow. Can we talk? Xander asked. Privately. Every instinct screamed at her to refuse, but there were people everywhere, and making a scene at Xavier's celebration seemed cruel. Fine, but make it quick. Xander led her to a trailer at the edge of the site, the kind used for construction offices. Inside, it was utilitarian but clean, with blueprints spread across a desk and a laptop left open. What do you want, Xander? Zara asked, staying near the door. To apologize, Xander said, and he actually did sound sincere. You were right. I was inappropriate at the gala. I had too much to drink and said things I shouldn't have. It won't happen again. Zara studied him, trying to determine if he was being genuine. Okay, thank you for the apology. I also wanted to give you something. Xander picked up a folder from the desk and held it out to her. Information about commercial property in the Arts District. There's a space coming available that would be perfect for your expansion plans. I know you wanted to add a garden center and classroom space. Despite herself, Zara took the folder and flipped through it. The property was indeed perfect. A corner lot with good visibility and plenty of square footage. How did you know about this? I make it my business to know about development opportunities, Xander said with a shrug. The owner is willing to negotiate on price for the right tenant. I could facilitate an introduction. Why would you do this? Zara asked suspiciously. Because Xavier cares about you and I care about Xavier, Xander said simply. Look, I know I made you uncomfortable and I'm trying to make amends. This is a legitimate business opportunity. No strings attached. Think about it. Before Zara could respond, the door to the trailer opened and Xavier stepped inside, his expression darkening when he saw them alone together. What's going on? He asked, his voice carefully neutral. I was just showing Zara some property information, Xander said easily, for her business expansion. Xavier looked at Zara and she held up the folder. It actually is a good property, she admitted, but I was just leaving. Outside the trailer, with the noise of the party distant, Xavier turned to her. Did he do anything? Say anything? He apologized, Zara said. and offered to help with my business. I don't trust him, but maybe he's genuine about trying to make things right." Xavier looked back at the trailer, his jaw tight. "I'm going to turn down the project manager position." "What? No, Xavier, you can't. This is your dream job." "My dream is building a life with you," Xavier said firmly, "not getting ahead at the cost of your comfort and safety." "I'll find another opportunity." "Xavier." Zara grabbed both his hands. "Don't give up this job because of me. But maybe it's time to think about some boundaries with Xander. You can work on his project without being his best friend." Xavier was quiet for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "You're right. Our friendship has been one-sided for a while now, hasn't it? I'm always grateful to him for opportunities and connections, but what does he get out of it besides someone to control?" It was the first time Zara had heard Xavier really question the dynamic of their friendship, and it gave her hope. Over the following weeks, Xavier did create distance from Xander. He still worked on the Hamilton Industries project, but he stopped going to dinners and social events unless they were strictly work-related. He stopped talking about Xander in conversation, stopped making excuses for his behavior. Xander noticed. He called Xavier frequently, stopped by the construction site with lunches and tickets to sporting events. Each time, Xavier was polite but firm in his refusals. And each time, Xander's expression grew a little colder. "You're letting her come between us," Xander said one afternoon when Xavier declined yet another invitation. Several workers on the site glanced over at the raised voices. "We've been friends for 10 years, Xavier. That has to count for something." "It does count," Xavier said evenly. "But so does how you treat the woman I love. I asked you to respect my relationship, and you couldn't do that. Actions have consequences." "I apologized to her," Xander protested. "I'm trying to make things right." "Making things right means giving us space," Xavier said. "Not trying to buy your way back into our good graces with property listings and job opportunities." Xander's face flushed with anger. "You know what? You're being ungrateful. I gave you this position. I convinced my father that you were ready for this level of responsibility. And this is how you repay me. I'm good at my job, Xander. I earned this position through my work, not through your charity." Xavier's voice was steel. "And if your friendship was always conditional on my gratitude, then maybe it wasn't much of a friendship to begin with." For a moment, Zara thought Xander might actually hit Xavier. His hands clenched into fists, and his face was mottled red with rage. Then he spun on his heel and walked away, leaving Xavier standing among the construction equipment and half-built walls. That night, Xavier came to Zara's apartment looking exhausted but also lighter somehow, like a weight had been lifted. "I think I just ended a 10-year friendship," he said, collapsing onto her couch. Zara sat beside him and pulled his head into her lap, running her fingers through his hair. "How do you feel?" "Sad," Xavier admitted, "but also relieved." "Does that make sense?" "Perfect sense," Zara said softly. "Sometimes we hold on to things because we think we should, not because they're good for us anymore." They stayed like that for a while, comfortable in the silence, until Xavier's phone buzzed with a text. He glanced at it and frowned. "It's from Xander's father," he said, sitting up. "He wants to meet with me tomorrow morning, first thing." Zara felt a chill of apprehension. "Do you think Xander told him about your argument?" "Probably," Xavier sighed. "But I'm not going to lie or apologize. If they want to fire me from the project, then that's what happens." The next morning, Xavier dressed in his best suit and headed to the Hamilton Industries headquarters downtown. The building was all glass and steel, stretching 30 stories into the sky, a monument to the Hamilton family's success and influence. He was ushered into a corner office with a view of the entire city. Marcus Hamilton stood by the window, a man in his 60s with silver hair and the same sharp blue eyes as his son. "Xavier, thank you for coming," Marcus said, gesturing to a chair. "I'll get straight to the point. My son came to me yesterday and asked that I remove you from the downtown development project." Xavier's stomach dropped, but he kept his expression neutral. "And are you going to do what he asked?" Marcus studied him for a long moment. "No. In fact, I'm here to offer you a promotion. I want you to take over as the director of all commercial development for Hamilton Industries. It would mean overseeing multiple projects, managing a team of project managers, and working directly with me and the board." Xavier stared at him, certain he had misheard. "I don't understand." "Xander wants me fired." "My son is talented in many ways," Marcus said, settling into the chair behind his desk. "But he's also spoiled and used to getting his way. He thinks friendship means ownership, that loyalty means obedience. I've watched him manipulate people for years, and I'm tired of it." Marcus leaned forward. "I also know about his behavior toward your girlfriend. My assistant told me about your inquiry. There are sealed complaints in our HR files that I only recently learned about, complaints that were handled quietly because Xander is my son. That ends now." "What about Xander?" Xavier asked carefully. "This will destroy your relationship with him." "Xander and I have a complicated relationship already," Marcus said with a rueful smile. "He resents that he has to earn his position in the company rather than just being handed control. But that's exactly why I'm doing it this way. He needs to learn that actions have consequences, even for a Hamilton." Marcus pulled out a contract. "This is a generous offer, Xavier. You'd be foolish to turn it down because of misplaced loyalty to my son." Xavier thought about Zara, about building a life together, about the financial security this position would provide. He thought about how hard he had worked to get here, the years of long hours and difficult projects. He had earned this. "I accept," Xavier said, reaching for the contract. Marcus smiled and shook his hand. "Welcome to the executive team. Now, let's discuss your transition plan." When Xavier called Zara with the news later that day, she could hear the disbelief and excitement in his voice. "Director of Commercial Development," he kept repeating. "I'm going to be making 3 times my current salary, Zara. 3 times. We could buy a house. You could expand your business without worrying about loans. This changes everything." "I'm so proud of you," Zara said, and she meant it. But she also worried about what this would mean for Xavier's safety. The Hamiltons were powerful and Xander was vindictive. What did Xander say when he found out? "I don't know. I haven't talked to him." Xavier's voice sobered. "His father said he would handle telling him. I start in the new position next week." The fallout was swift and ugly. Xander showed up at the construction site the next day, screaming at Xavier in front of the entire crew about betrayal and backstabbing. Security had to escort him away. He sent dozens of texts and voicemails, alternating between rage and attempts at guilt tripping. "You owe me everything," one voicemail said. "I made you. Without me, you'd still be some nobody swinging a hammer." Xavier deleted them without responding, but Xander's harassment didn't stop there. He started showing up at Bennett Bloom's trying to talk to Zara, asking her to convince Xavier to call him. The first time, Zara was polite but firm in telling him to leave. The second time, she threatened to call the police. The third time, she did call the police, and Xander was issued a formal warning to stay away. "He's unraveling," Xavier said grimly after hearing about the third incident. "I've never seen him like this." "He's dangerous," Zara countered. "We need to be careful." They were careful. Xavier hired a security company to monitor both Zara's apartment and her shop. He varied his routes to and from work. They stopped posting on social media about their whereabouts. It felt extreme, but better safe than sorry. 2 weeks into Xavier's new position, Marcus Hamilton called him into his office again. "I wanted you to know that I've asked Xander to take a leave of absence from the company," Marcus said heavily. "His behavior has become erratic, and frankly, I'm concerned about his mental state. I've convinced him to spend some time at a private facility in Switzerland, somewhere he can get the help he needs." Xavier felt a complicated mix of relief and sadness. "I never wanted it to come to this." "I know," Marcus said kindly. "But sometimes caring about someone means letting them face the consequences of their actions. Xander has been enabled his entire life, and it's made him into someone I barely recognize. This is as much my fault as anyone's." With Xander out of the country, things settled into a new normal. Xavier threw himself into his new role, proving that Marcus's faith in him was well placed. He managed multiple high-stakes projects with skill and diplomacy, earning the respect of his team and the board. Zara finally moved forward with expanding Bennett blooms, though she found a different property than the one Xander had shown her. She didn't want any connection to him, even a beneficial one. The new space was smaller but perfect, with room for a garden center and a bright classroom where she could teach floral design workshops. On the day of the grand opening of Bennett Bloom's Garden Center and Design School, Xavier surprised her by showing up with 24 red roses and a small velvet box. Zara's heart stopped. "Xavier, what are you doing?" They were standing in her new classroom, surrounded by the smell of flowers and soil, with late afternoon sun streaming through the windows. It was perfect. Xavier got down on one knee, and Zara felt tears spring to her eyes. "Zara Bennett, you are the strongest, most incredible woman I've ever known," Xavier said, his voice thick with emotion. "You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. You challenged me to be better, to expect more from the people in my life. You make every day brighter just by being in it." He opened the box to reveal a simple but beautiful ring with a single diamond. "I want to spend the rest of my life making you as happy as you make me. Will you marry me?" "Yes," Zara gasped, pulling him up so she could kiss him. "Yes, yes, yes." The ring fit perfectly. Later, Xavier would tell her he had recruited her best friend to find out her ring size, that he had been planning this proposal for weeks, that he had almost proposed a dozen times but wanted to wait for the perfect moment. "This was perfect," Zara assured him, looking around at the classroom she had dreamed of creating, thinking about how far they had both come. This was exactly right. They got married 6 months later in a small ceremony at a botanical garden, surrounded by close friends and family. Marcus Hamilton attended, having become something of a mentor to both of them. Xander was still in Switzerland, and while Xavier sometimes expressed sadness about the loss of their friendship, he never regretted the choices that led them here. "I wouldn't change anything," he told Zara on their wedding night as they stood on the balcony of their honeymoon suite, looking out at the ocean. "Every hard decision, every difficult conversation, it all led me to this moment with you." Zara leaned against him, feeling safe and loved and exactly where she was supposed to be. "I love you, Xavier Hayes." "I love you, Zara Hayes," he said back, and the name sounded perfect. They spent 2 weeks in Hawaii, learning to surf and eating too much poke and making love as the waves crashed against the shore. When they returned home, it was to the house they had bought together in a quiet neighborhood, a charming craftsman with a big backyard where Zara immediately started planning a garden. Life settled into a beautiful rhythm. Xavier continued to excel at Hamilton Industries, eventually being promoted to Vice President of Development. Zara's business thrived, her classes consistently selling out, and her event designs becoming sought after throughout the city. They adopted a golden retriever named Daisy who loved to lie among the flowers in the garden. They talked about children. At first in abstract terms, someday dreams, but then with more urgency as they approached their 30s. Zara wanted to wait until the business could run without her constant supervision. Xavier wanted to make sure they were financially stable enough to provide everything a child could need. "We're overthinking this," Zara said one night over dinner. "People have babies all the time without having everything perfectly lined up." "I just want to give our kids everything," Xavier said. "The stability I didn't always have growing up." "They'll have something better than money." Zara reached across the table for his hand. "They'll have parents who love each other and them. That's the most important thing. They stop trying to plan it perfectly and just let life happen." When Zara found out she was pregnant 8 months after their second anniversary, Xavier cried happy tears and immediately started baby-proofing the house despite Zara laughing and telling him they had months to prepare. The pregnancy was relatively easy, and Xavier was an attentive husband, going to every appointment, reading books about childbirth and infant care, and building a beautiful crib by hand in the nursery. "You're going to be such a good father," Zara told him as she watched him carefully sand the crib rails to ensure there were no rough edges. "I want to be," Xavier said seriously. "I want our kids to always know they're loved and supported, no matter what." Their daughter was born on a warm spring morning, arriving 3 hours after they rushed to the hospital in a panic because Zara's water broke while she was teaching a floral design class. She was perfect, with Xavier's green eyes and a fuzzy cap of dark hair. They named her Lily Rose Hayes, and she wrapped both her parents completely around her tiny fingers from the first moment. Xavier was a devoted father, taking paternity leave to help with the newborn stage, and never complaining about the sleepless nights and endless diaper changes. He would walk Lily around the house at 3 in the morning, singing off key lullabies and telling her stories about how he met her mother. Marcus Hamilton visited when Lily was 2 weeks old, bringing a stuffed giraffe taller than Zara and a substantial check for her college fund. "She's beautiful," Marcus said, his voice soft as he looked at the baby sleeping in Zara's arms. "You two have built something wonderful here, a real family." "Thank you," Xavier said, and the gratitude in his voice was for more than just the gifts. Marcus had given him a chance when his own son had tried to sabotage him. That faith had changed Xavier's life. "How is Xander doing?" Zara asked carefully. It had been over 2 years since any of them had seen him. Marcus's expression grew complicated. "Better. He's been doing intensive therapy and has acknowledged that his behavior was inappropriate and harmful. He sent a letter, actually, asking me to pass along his apologies to both of you. He understands if you don't want contact with him, but he wanted you to know he's working on becoming a better person." Xavier and Zara exchanged a look, years of partnership making communication almost wordless. "I hope he finds peace," Xavier said finally. "But I don't think we're ready for any kind of reconciliation, and I'm not sure we ever will be." Marcus nodded, understanding. "That's entirely fair. He hurt you both badly, and some bridges can't be rebuilt." He looked down at Lily again. "But from tragedy often comes growth. If none of that had happened, you might not have ended up here, with this beautiful family and these successful careers. Sometimes the hardest moments lead us to our best lives." After Marcus left, Zara and Xavier sat together on the couch, Lily sleeping between them, and reflected on how far they had come from that night at the art gallery when a champagne glass had nearly hit the floor. "You ever think about how different things could have been?" Zara asked. "If Xander had been a better person, if he had respected our relationship from the start." "Sometimes," Xavier admitted, "but I think Marcus is right. Going through all that hardship showed me what really matters. I learned to set boundaries, to choose you over a friendship that was never healthy to begin with. Those lessons made me a better man. You were always a good man, Zara said, leaning her head on his shoulder. But I know what you mean. I learned to trust my instincts, to speak up when something felt wrong, even if it was uncomfortable. And we learned we could survive hard times together. Lily stirred and made a small sound, and both parents immediately turned their attention to her, ready to meet whatever needs she had. It was a preview of the years to come, of putting this small person first, of building a family together through patience and love and daily choices. 3 years later, they welcomed a son, Jasper Xavier Hayes, who had his mother's smile and his father's serious eyes. Lily adored her baby brother, insisting on helping with everything from diaper changes to choosing his outfits. Zara had expanded Bennett Blooms into a small chain, with 3 locations across the city and a thriving online business. Xavier had become executive vice president at Hamilton Industries, with Marcus openly grooming him to potentially take over as CEO when Marcus eventually retired. "How would you feel about that?" Zara asked when Xavier first mentioned the possibility. "Running the whole company." "Terrified," Xavier admitted with a laugh, "but also excited. I have ideas for how to make Hamilton Industries more sustainable, more community-focused. And Marcus has said he would stay on as chairman so I wouldn't be doing it alone." "What about Xander?" Zara asked, because it was the question that hung over everything. "He's the Hamilton heir. Wouldn't he expect to take over?" "He signed away his rights to the company as part of his treatment," Xavier said quietly. Apparently, part of his therapy involved recognizing that his sense of entitlement was a major part of his problems. He didn't want the responsibility of running a company when he's still working on himself. Marcus said Xander has actually been quite successful in Switzerland. He's working as a counselor now, helping other people who struggle with entitlement and destructive behaviors. Zara felt a surge of something that might have been forgiveness, or at least the beginning of it. She hoped Xander had truly changed, that he had found a way to use his experiences to help others. But she still had no desire to see him or speak to him. Some wounds healed better with distance. Life continued, beautiful and ordinary and extraordinary all at once. Xavier coached Lily's soccer team. Zara taught Jasper about different flowers in the garden, his chubby toddler hands surprisingly gentle with the delicate petals. They hosted Thanksgiving dinners and went on family vacations and navigated the challenges of work-life balance with varying degrees of success. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Xavier surprised Zara with a trip back to the botanical garden where they had gotten married. They walked the same paths they had walked as bride and groom, holding hands and talking about everything and nothing. "You remember what I said on our wedding night?" Xavier asked as they stood by a pond covered with lily pads. "That I wouldn't change anything about our journey, I remember," Zara said, watching the koi fish glide through the water. "I still mean it," Xavier said. "Every hard moment, every challenge, it all brought us here. To this life we've built, these children we're raising, this love that gets deeper every single day." Zara turned to face him, seeing the gray starting to thread through his dark hair, the laugh lines around his eyes, the face she had woken up next to for 10 years and would hopefully wake up next to for 50 more. "I love you," she said simply, because sometimes the most important truths didn't need elaborate explanation. "I love you," Xavier said back, and kissed her there among the flowers and the soft sound of water. Two people who had found each other in the most unexpected way and built something lasting and real. They returned home to their children and their dog and their beautiful, ordinary life. Lily showed them the picture she had drawn at her grandmother's house, all 4 members of their family holding hands under a bright sun. Jasper wanted to show Daddy the block tower he had built that was almost as tall as he was. That night, after the kids were in bed and the house was quiet, Zara and Xavier sat in their backyard garden, surrounded by the flowers she had planted and the trees they had watched grow over the years. "Thank you," Zara said softly. "For what?" Xavier asked, his arm around her shoulders. "For being exactly who you are," Zara said. "For choosing me, for building this life with me, for being the best father to our children, for all of it." Xavier pulled her closer and kissed the top of her head. "You never have to thank me for loving you. It's the easiest thing I've ever done." Above them, stars began to appear in the darkening sky, the same stars that had been shining the night they met, the night their lives had changed in the best possible way. They had fallen in love despite complications, had overcome obstacles that might have destroyed a lesser relationship, and had emerged stronger for it. Their story wasn't a fairy tale with a perfect prince and princess. It was better than that. It was real, built on trust and communication, and the daily choice to love each other even when it was hard. They had created something lasting, a family filled with laughter and love, a partnership that would weather whatever storms came their way. And as they sat in their garden under the stars, hands intertwined and hearts full, they knew that this was exactly where they were meant to be. Not because fate had decreed it, but because they had chosen each other, again and again, through every challenge and triumph. The brother Xavier had found in Xander had turned out to be toxic, but from that ending had come a beautiful beginning. Marcus had become the mentor and father figure Xavier had needed. The hardship had taught them both invaluable lessons about boundaries and self-worth. And most importantly, it had shown them that their love was strong enough to survive anything. Their children would grow up in a home filled with love and security, learning by example what a healthy relationship looked like. They would know that sometimes the hard choice was the right choice, that standing up for what you believe in mattered more than keeping the peace, that real friends supported your happiness rather than demanding your loyalty at the cost of your well-being. Years later, when Lily was a teenager and asked her parents how they had made their marriage work for so long, Xavier and Zara would exchange a knowing look before answering. "We choose each other every day," Zara would say. "We communicate even when it is uncomfortable," Xavier would add. "We remember that we are a team facing life together," they would say in unison, and Lily would roll her eyes at their sappiness but secretly hope she found a love like theirs someday. But that was in the future. On this night, their 10th anniversary, Xavier and Zara simply held each other in their garden and felt grateful for every step that had led them here. The champagne glass that almost fell, the art gallery where they met, the complications with Xander that had tested them, the victories and challenges that had shaped them, all of it, every single moment had been worth it to arrive at this place of contentment and love. And as Xavier pulled Zara closer and she rested her head on his shoulder, they both knew that whatever came next, they would face it together, just as they always had. Their love story had begun with a chance meeting and had survived trials that might have broken others. It was a testament to the power of choosing wisely, loving deeply, and never settling for less than you deserved. And it was a story that would continue day by day, choice by choice, until the very end, because some love stories aren't about finding a perfect person. They are about finding someone worth fighting for, someone who makes you want to be better, someone who sees you at your worst and loves you anyway. Xavier and Zara had found that in each other, and they had built a life that reflected the depth of that commitment. As the night deepened, and the first cricket songs began, they finally went inside, locking up their home and checking on their sleeping children before heading to bed themselves. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and joys, school drop-offs and work meetings and dinner preparations and bedtime stories. But tonight, they simply held each other and whispered promises in the dark, grateful for this life they had created, this love they had nurtured, this forever they had chosen together. And in the morning, they would wake up and choose it all over again, just as they had every day for 10 years and would continue to do for all the years to come. The brother Xander had tried to be to Xavier, had ultimately shown Xavier what real family meant. It wasn't about blood or history or obligation. It was about showing up, supporting each other, celebrating successes, and working through challenges together. Xavier had found that with Marcus Hamilton, with his team at work, with the community he and Zara had built around their family. But most of all, he had found it with Zara, his partner in every sense of the word. She had fallen for the billionaire's best friend without knowing the complications that would bring. And through it all, the brother who had tried to come between them had instead pushed them into a forever that was stronger and more beautiful than either could have imagined. Their story was complete, their family thriving, their love eternal. And that was the greatest victory of all.